Previously on Botanical Woman.
Word on the street is there are plants to be saved in the alley.
Welcome to the scene of the crime. Initial assessments, dehydration.
I have a bucket of water here where I'm going to test to see how much water the soil is going to absorb. So I'm just gonna let it go in there, and it's gonna float obviously for a bit because it's very, very dry. It's bone dry. I just want to say that if you're going to abandon your plants outside, please leave the pot on. It really decreases their survival rate by quite a bit. So let's look at it. So most of the dirt is still very clung to the root ball. It's still very dry inside. So that means that even if the person was watering it very well, it's still very dry, even though it's been just sitting here. So this is not... The medium has expired, basically. So it's a good idea. So if you're watering your plants and this happens to it, it really means that the medium is expired and you need to change it. Like if you don't remove the medium and you just put it in a new pot and pot it up, the same thing will obviously just repeat itself, so you have to remove it. Do I prefer doing it wet or dry? I guess most people would probably argue that doing this to a wet root ball is better than a dry. I guess I can't argue with that. The other issue with this is that after you've done this and it's really wet right now, as you can see, I find that when, you know how like you're supposed to basically water the plant completely after you repot it? Well, if you water it now, it's just gonna be super drenched. So I usually leave it for a day before I water it again. So I'm gonna get rid of. I don't know, I kind of want more of this to get off. I don't really like this medium. I don't like using water for another reason, is like it just kind of makes a hot mess everywhere. It's all over the plant, all over me. And you can't, I feel like you can't really see what's going on with the roots because it's all covered. All right, out it comes. I'm gonna have to rinse it in the sink. Can you get the colander? It's behind you. Colander is a great plant tool so that you don't get perlite and crap down your drain. So I'll go over there, rinse this bad boy. It's like washing salad. Just get off all the dirt. So these roots are not alive, I'm not surprised. So with peperomias, I find that they get very unhappy when they get wet feet, like waterlogged. Really unhappy with that. But this is not the problem we're seeing here. This is dryness. I'm just removing more of the old medium. I don't like medium that's peat base. It just, This is what happens, you know, you buy a beautiful plant from the nursery and doing great, you know, you have it for a season, and then by year 2, it starts going downhill, and that's not your fault, that's the medium's fault. So if you put your plant in a good medium, it actually lasts a while. Like, it should last at least 2 years, easy. Because, think about it, the medium's only really, at least for me, I view the medium as mainly just to hold moisture, and, you know, through your liquid fertilizers, your plant will be able to get most of the nutrients it needs. But most important of all, obviously, it needs sunlight or light. So the peperomia, I would say, out of the 2 plants is, you know, doing better. I might even need a smaller pot. This pot looks way too big for this. So this is why I don't like using water, because you just get like a sopping wet mess. And yeah, see, it doesn't really even have that big of a root system, which is typical of peperomias. So a shallower pot using terracotta is a good idea. But honestly, I'm gonna say something very controversial, which is that, you know, there's this huge debate between plastic pots and terracotta pots and what's better. I don't really find either of them to be particularly better. I mean, obviously a plant that prefers drier medium or drier feet, like a cactus, will naturally do better, I guess, in a terracotta pot, but, you know, you just adjust your watering needs as needed, so I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal. whatever pot material you end up using. So, having said that, if you are putting your plant outside, I would say using actually a plastic pot can help as well because it helps retain some of the moisture, whereas terracotta will just leave it. It leaves the pot much quicker. But once again, the pot size matter. The bigger the pot, the more water it will retain, so that's also helpful. There's like, just a lot of variables that you have to think about, so it doesn't really come down to whether or not the pot is plastic or terracotta. You just have to, what medium, how much light, all that plays, I think, a much bigger role in the healthier plant than the material the pot is made out of. That's my 2 cents. If you have any additional comments you would like to add or disagreements, let me know in the comments below. So I'm drying the roots with a paper towel because once I pot it up, the moisture is going to even have a harder time leaving because it's, being buried. So it's just a good idea because I have killed plants like this before without realizing. After I've rinsed it with water, it's just too wet. So for a peperomia, it's better to choose a shorter and wider pot than a taller pot. It has to do with the moisture, if you think about it. With a wider area, more water will be able to escape versus something taller. More water will be retained at the bottom, and you don't want that. That's going to cause root rot. So shallower pots are better. A lot of the pots that I like to use, particularly for my cactus, are actually they're called bulb pots, and those are really shallow and really wide, and those are great for your cactus. And I guess peperomias, I've not tried, but I imagine you would also have to water more frequently as well. So here, the mix that I just made is some leca and potting soil, and I added a ton of perlite because I can tell you that I have never used potting soil right out of the bag and it was fine. It's just not, it's too wet, too much moisture. You have to add something to give it more air and allow for the roots to breathe and also the moisture to leave. So it's a balance. And I do think that the climate you live in will alter this recipe depending on how dry or how wet it is. But for me, I find having it more dry is better because plants will typically survive drought much better than being overwatered, because once it's overwatered, you get root rot. Or not once, but you keep overwatering it over time, it's going to get root rot. Okay. So this already has nutrients because of the potting soil. I buy organic potting soil, which is the same one that you see me use in all my videos. It's my go-to. I don't buy Miracle Grow. You want to buy a potting medium that really has the ingredients listed out for you, and so you can see what there is. And this one is very good. You can't get it online, but you could probably find it in your local nursery. I try not to buy cheap potting soil. That was kind of a mistake that I made in the beginning. Like, oh, this is like $3 versus this one that's $10. But I find that long term, the more organic ones just last longer, and it's just healthier for your plants in general. So if you can afford it, I would do with the, slightly more expensive one. This bag was that bag out there was only $8. And yeah, that's twice the price of what you would get at Lowe's, but I still prefer it. I think my plants are happier and I don't have to worry about it as much. Ta-da! Just kidding. I'm going to go water it, and I'll bring it back so you guys can see how beautiful it is. So I just gave this peperomia a nice drench. I was actually just noticing that these leaves are actually, if you have these marks on your peperomia, it's because they got sunburned. So I think, being the novice plant investigator that I am, I think this plant was basically burned. It's gonna be okay. It should pop back pretty easily. Peperomias are can be finicky, but I find the ones with the thicker stems and the bigger leaves to be more hardy. So most of the leaves will probably fall off. Not a big deal. If you're interested, I will show you the money tree. As the last time I saved 2 plants was the money tree and also a rubber tree, but the rubber tree is in the propagation box, so I'm not going to go there in this video, but right here, right behind this giant monstera, is the money tree. And right now the sun, it's like kind of like mid-afternoon, so the sun hasn't quite hit this area yet, but normally it would around 4, after 4 o'clock. But it is back and it has put out a lot of new growth. It might have gotten a little bit too much sun, so it's a little bit, and during the heat wave, it was also, I would say, dried out a bit. So a little combination of things, but I would say it's doing really well, considering that most of the roots, if you watch that video, it was gone, just like this plant. I would say the money tree is doing well. No idea what's happening with the rubber tree, but I have other propagation things that I would like to talk about in my propagation box, so check out that video when it comes out in a week or 2. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy growing!